Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I never thought I'd have to defend my own land from a pack of entitled suburbanites, but here we are. My quiet life in the woods turned into a battlefield when the HOA decided they could force their rules on me. What they didn't know? I'm not the kind of man who backs down. I never thought I'd have to defend my own land from a group of entitled suburbanites, but here I am. My name is Jacob Jake Miller, and 10 years ago, I traded city life for solitude, bought myself a cabin deep in the woods, 50 acres of unspoiled land, thick with towering pines and winding trails, far from nosy neighbors and bureaucratic nonsense. This place was supposed to be my refuge, my little slice of untouched wilderness, but that was before they moved in. At first, it was just rumors. A new development, Silver Creek Village they called it, popped up on the other side of my property. At the time, I shrugged it off. Let them have their manicured lawns, their white picket fences, their overpriced cookie-cutter homes. I had my trees, my quiet, and the kind of freedom no HOA could put a price tag on. But, like a disease, their rules, their regulations, their entitlement started creeping towards me, inch by inch. The first sign of trouble came with the letters. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, some automated HOA nonsense sent out to the wrong address. Dear homeowner, as a valued member of Silver Creek Village, you are required to comply with community standards. I barely skimmed the rest before chucking it into my fireplace. My land had never been part of any HOA. I had the deed to prove it, signed, sealed, and legal. No way in hell was I paying fees or following rules meant for some suburban nightmare. Then came Karen. She strutted up my driveway one morning, clipboard in hand, dressed like she was leading a corporate board meeting instead of walking through the dirt and pine needles. Platinum blonde bob, stiff posture, an air of self-importance so thick I could almost choke on it. "You must be Mr. Miller," she said, her tone already dripping with condescension. "I'm Catherine Larson, president of the Silver Creek Village Homeowners Association." I took a sip of my coffee, watching her like I would a bear wandering too close to my porch. "Good for you." She blinked as if she hadn't expected resistance. "I'm here to discuss your compliance with our community standards." That got a laugh out of me. "Lady, I'm not part of your community." She smiled, but there was something wolfish about it. "Actually, there's been a recent update to the neighborhood zoning maps. Your property now falls within our jurisdiction." I narrowed my eyes. "That's so." "And who exactly made that decision?" She glanced at her clipboard, flipping a page with practiced authority. "Our legal team worked with the county to revise outdated property lines. It's quite common in expanding communities." Translation: they bribed someone and thought I'd roll over like a good little homeowner. "Well, that's funny," I said, setting down my coffee, "because I've got a deed that says otherwise. My land isn't part of Silver Creek Village, and it never will be. Now, if you'll excuse me, you'll need to submit a request if you'd like to dispute it," she cut in, as if she hadn't heard a word I said. "In the meantime, you'll need to pay the outstanding membership fees." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "Karen, let me save you some time. I don't care what your maps say. I don't care what rules you think you can enforce. I am not part of your HOA. And if you or your little committee step foot on my land again, we're going to have a real problem." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but it didn't last long. She pursed her lips and said, "I see. Well, I strongly suggest you reconsider." I didn't bother replying, just turned on my heel and walked back into my cabin. I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. That same afternoon, I had another problem to deal with. A wasp nest, right outside my porch, tucked in the hollow of a thick oak tree, buzzing with life. I'd noticed it a few days earlier and knew it was only a matter of time before they started making themselves a nuisance. Normally, I'm all for letting nature do its thing, but when it comes to wasps, no thanks. I grabbed a can of spray and set to work. A few good blasts and a controlled fire later, and I watched as the last of them scattered. Their home, nothing but smoldering ashes. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A few days later, I spotted them again. A new nest, just a few trees over. Same aggressive little bastards, just a different home. No matter how many times I cleared them out, they found another place to settle, inching closer to my cabin, like they were testing me, just like the HOA. The letters didn't stop. If anything, they became more aggressive. Each new envelope from the Silver Creek Village HOA arrived with bold red stamps. Final notice. Immediate action required. Legal consequences pending. I burned every single one in my fireplace. Then came the visits. It started with strangers wandering onto my land, men in polo shirts and khakis, carrying clipboards, taking pictures of my cabin like they were real estate appraisers. One of them had the audacity to walk right up to my porch, snapping photos of my windows. I stepped outside, shotgun in hand, not pointed at him, just held across my chest like I was getting comfortable. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice casual. The guy nearly dropped his clipboard. I'm with the HOA assessment committee. We're conducting a routine evaluation." "No, you're trespassing." Well, this is part of the neighborhood, sir." "Not my neighborhood." I took a slow step forward. "You got exactly 10 seconds to get the hell off my land before I start wondering if you're a burglar." He tripped over himself, running back to his car. The next morning, my internet went out. When I called the provider, they said my service had been transferred to the HOA's community network. I had never authorized anything of the sort. When I demanded they restore my original setup, they told me I had to contact my HOA representative. They were trying to box me in. Later that week, I found a for sale sign planted at the edge of my driveway. Someone had gone through the trouble of making it look official, complete with a fake realtor number. My land wasn't for sale, and I sure as hell hadn't put that sign there. I yanked it out and hurled it into the woods. Then there was the garbage. Bags of trash, dumped at the edge of my property line. Some of it was household waste, cans, food containers, but other things were more deliberate. Old tires, rusty furniture, an entire busted-up mailbox, as if they were trying to make my land look like an eyesore. And still, Karen kept coming back. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be," she said one afternoon, standing at my gate like she owned the place. I crossed my arms. "You mean difficult for you?" She gave me a tight smile. "Mr. Miller, all we're asking is for you to be a cooperative member of our community." I gestured at the pile of trash still sitting at the edge of my property. "Yeah, real welcoming community you got here." Karen barely reacted. "You could make this easier on yourself. Accept the new zoning agreement, pay your dues, and we'll handle the rest. We'll even help you bring your property up to standard, free of charge." I scoffed. "That's some kind of bribe?" "It's an opportunity to avoid unnecessary legal trouble," she said smoothly. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I smiled. "Karen, I'd rather deal with 1,000 wasps than let you win." And just like that, I turned and walked away. But I knew this wasn't over. It was just getting started. If they wanted a fight, I was more than happy to give them one. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office and requested a certified copy of my property deed. It took all of 15 minutes for them to confirm what I already knew. My land had never been part of Silver Creek Village. No rezoning, no legal loopholes, no mysterious jurisdiction changes. I made 5 copies. One went straight to my lawyer. The second I mailed to the HOA's office. Certified delivery, signature required. The rest I kept for when Karen inevitably tried to pull more of her nonsense. When I got back home, I installed motion-activated security cameras around the perimeter of my cabin. Not the cheap kind either. I invested in high-resolution night vision-enabled cameras that send real-time alerts straight to my phone. I wasn't about to let these people keep sneaking onto my land without consequences. And it didn't take long before I caught them. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I pulled up the live feed and saw a group of men in HOA-branded polos standing by the edge of my property. One of them carried a measuring tape. Another had a clipboard. They were discussing something, gesturing toward my cabin, when one of them pulled out a spray can and started marking my trees. I was outside before they even knew what hit them. "Evening, boys." They jumped like I'd fired a gun in the air. One of them, a pudgy guy with thick glasses, held up his hands. "Now, no need for hostility, sir. We're just conducting a what?" I cut him off. "Land survey. Property evaluation? Because you're trespassing." One of the others, younger and cockier, scoffed. "We have authorization." "Oh, yeah?" I stepped closer, staring him down. "Who signed it?" He hesitated. "That's what I thought." I muttered. "Here's how this is gonna go. You're going to take your cans, your clipboards, and whatever other HOA nonsense you brought with you, and you're going to leave. Now." Pudgy guy started nodding so fast I thought his glasses would fall off. The cocky one hesitated just a second too long, so I smiled and pulled my phone out. Tell you what, since you're so sure you have authorization, let's get the sheriff on the line. I'm sure they'll be real interested in your paperwork. That did it. They left without another word. The next morning, I found a fresh violation notice nailed to my mailbox. The HOA was now citing me for unauthorized fencing and surveillance equipment, as if I needed their permission to secure my own damn property. I laughed, took the paper inside, and framed it. It was officially the most ridiculous piece of HOA garbage I'd ever seen. Karen showed up that afternoon, all smiles, as if she hadn't just tried to strong-arm me into submission. "You're really making this harder than it needs to be, Jacob," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I leaned against my porch railing. "Oh, I don't know. I'm actually having a lot of fun." Her jaw tightened just for a second. "I assume you received our latest compliance request. You mean the one where you pretend I need your permission to put up cameras on my own property?" I snorted. "Yeah, Karen, got it right here." I tapped the frame hanging on my wall just inside the door. She didn't even look. "I was hoping we could resolve this peacefully." "You were hoping I'd roll over." She took a deep breath, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. Then she glanced past me, toward the trees. "You've had some pest problems, haven't you?" My stomach dropped. She knew about the wasps. I turned my head slightly, following her gaze. Sure enough, the new nest had settled into one of the trees not far from my cabin, a little further than the last one, but still close enough to be a problem. I turned back to Karen, my eyes narrowing. "What's your point?" She smiled, slow and smug. "Just that nature has a way of creeping in when you least expect it, and that problems have a tendency to spread." That was a threat. She wasn't backing down. She was escalating. Fine, two could play that game. I crossed my arms, gave her the slowest, laziest grin I could muster, and said, "Karen, you have no idea what you've just started." I slept like a baby that night, knowing Karen was probably seething in whatever overpriced suburban McMansion she lived in, plotting her next move. She wanted a war? Fine. But I had the home field advantage. Around 3 a.m., my security camera app buzzed, motion detected. I groggily grabbed my phone and squinted at the screen. And there she was, Karen in all her glory, creeping onto my land like a raccoon with an MBA. She was dressed in all black, which, frankly, was hilarious. Like she thought she was pulling off some elite covert op instead of just breaking the law in the most Karen way possible. And, of course, she came armed, with a bucket of paint. I sat up in bed, watching in stunned amusement as she marched straight toward my cabin, pulled out a brush, and, oh, you've got to be kidding me, she was painting my front door. Bright, freaking, beige. I nearly dropped my phone laughing. This woman had lost her damn mind. Did she think if she HOA'd my property hard enough, I'd just give up? Then, right as I was considering whether to go out there and scare the absolute hell out of her, karma stepped in. She took a step back to admire her work, turned around, and walked face first into the wasp nest. For a split second, there was silence. Then, absolute chaos. Karen let out the most unholy scream I've ever heard in my life. Somewhere between a dying pterodactyl and a car alarm malfunctioning, she flailed, smacking at her hair, spinning in circles, still holding the bucket of paint, which meant she managed to fling beige paint all over herself in the process. The wasps did not take kindly to the intrusion. I watched, tears in my eyes, as she tripped over a tree root, went down like a sack of overpriced organic groceries, and rolled directly into the bucket. The paint splashed over her face, her clothes, even her perfect platinum bob. I could hear her shrieking from inside my cabin. "Oh my God! Get them off! Get them off!" Now, a better man might have gone out there to help. I am not that man. Instead, I zoomed in on my security feed, hit record, and sat back to enjoy the show. Karen scrambled to her feet, slapping at the air like a possessed inflatable tube man, and took off toward the road, only to trip again, this time landing face first in the mud. She finally disappeared out of view, still wailing, still covered in paint, a cloud of furious wasps in hot pursuit. And that's how I went back to sleep that night, knowing I had just witnessed the greatest moment of my life. But the real treat, the morning after, I woke up grinning, brewed myself the best damn cup of coffee I'd ever had, and stepped outside to admire her handiwork. And, oh, what a sight it was! My half-painted front door dripped with streaks of beige, uneven and patchy, like a failed Pinterest project. But the real masterpiece, the paint bucket, lying in the dirt, with a perfect Karen-shaped imprint beside it. Even better, the HOA violation notice nailed right next to it. I had officially been cited for unauthorized exterior modifications. I could not breathe. I actually had to sit down on my porch because I was laughing so hard. She vandalized my cabin and then gave me a citation for it. This was next level. This was HOA villainy in its final form. And I could not wait to see her face when I presented the security footage in court. I've been looking forward to this day with impatience, like a child on Christmas morning. Karen, in all her crazy glory, actually made accusations against me. Her official complaint? Deliberate threat to life and damage to property. According to her, I deliberately lured her into my territory and staged an attack by wasps. Yes, indeed. In the meantime, I filed a counterclaim for trespassing, vandalism, harassment, and filing a false police report. I had video evidence. I had witnesses. The law was on my side. And, what is the best thing? I cornered Karen. The courtroom was packed that morning. Apparently, the news of Karen's overnight paint disaster had spread through the HOA like wildfire. People were whispering to each other, and some were even laughing under their breath when she burst into the hall, still trying to maintain her dignity. She looked stern. Her once flawless platinum bob was disheveled, probably due to an urgent haircut after an unsuccessful encounter with a bucket of paint. Despite the sweltering heat outside, she covered the last splashes of beige paint on her arms with long sleeves. And even though she was trying to stay calm, I could see it. The panic, the twitching of her jaw every time she looked at me. She knew she was about to lose, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The judge, a businesslike woman in her 60s, wasted no time. "Mr. Miller," she said, looking at me over the top of her glasses, "I take it you have any evidence that you can present?" I nodded, pulling out my USB stick. "Yes, Your Honor. The CCTV footage on my property on the night in question." The bailiff connected it to the monitor in the courtroom. I turned to look at Karen just in time to see her soul leaving her body. The recording was played back. There she is, sneaking into my territory. Here she is, spoiling my front door. Here she is, walking straight into a hornet's nest, losing her mind, falling into a bucket of paint, and running away like crazy. The whole courtroom was confused. Are the HOA board members present? They giggled. Random neighbors who came just to see her fall. They held back their laughter, covering their faces with their hands. Even the judge had to take a long pause to pull herself together before she spoke again. Karen, who now looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole, cleared her throat. "Your Honor, I was... On these shots, it is clear that he was clearly forced. I was... You are trespassing on someone else's territory," the judge interjected in an icy tone. Karen paled. "And you were caught desecrating Mr. Miller's property." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing. By the time my lawyer had finished laying out the rest of my case, including fake infringement notices, harassment, and an apparently illegal attempt to appropriate my property under the jurisdiction of the HOA, Karen looked like she was about to faint. The judge sighed, rubbing her temples. "This is one of the most absurd cases that I have ever had to consider. Not only is Mr. Miller not responsible for any wrongdoing, but it is clear that you, Mrs. Larson, have engaged in harassment, fraud, and trespassing." She raised the hammer. "The court's decision is entirely in favor of the defendant. The second the hammer hit the tree, it was all over. Karen has lost everything. She was ordered to pay me $50,000 in damages for vandalism, harassment, and legal fees. The HOA board, desperate to avoid further trouble, voted for her not to become president within an hour. And what is the most interesting thing? She couldn't afford to make a decision, which meant Karen had to sell her house. Now I would be satisfied just knowing that she was leaving. But it seems that fate had one last gift for me. On the day she moved in, I happened to be outside chopping wood for the winter when I heard mocking laughter coming from the street. A group of her former neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, watching as movers removed furniture from her house. One guy, an elderly man in a Hawaiian shirt, raised a beer mug and shouted, "So, Karen, where is the HOA that can help you now?" The whole company burst out laughing. Karen blushed like a beetroot and stomped to her car, almost tripping over a stone on the sidewalk. I couldn't resist. I leaned on the handle of the axe, smiled lazily at her, and said, "Hi, Karen. If you need a new place, I heard the Silver Creek HOA is looking for members." For one beautiful, delightful second, it seemed to me that she was about to explode. Instead, she turned on her heel, slammed the car door, and drove out of the driveway. And just like that, Karen was gone. I stood there for a long time, absorbing the peaceful silence she left behind, the sweet, satisfying peace of victory. I fought, I won, and what now? I could finally enjoy my land, my house, and my damn wasps in peace. The air felt different after Karen was gone. Lighter, quieter, better. For the first time in months, I woke up without checking my security cameras for trespassers. No more fake violation notices. No more HOA harassment. No more entitled lunatics thinking they owned my land. I had won, and that kind of victory deserved a proper celebration. So, a week after Karen slithered out of town, I decided to throw a party. Not just any party, a full-blown Karen's Gone bonfire bash. Open invitation to anyone in Silver Creek Village who had ever been screwed over by the HOA, bullied by Karen, or just wanted to enjoy a night of good food, cold beer, and some well-earned laughter. I expected maybe 10 or 15 people. I got over 50. By the time the sun started setting, my land looked like a damn festival. Cars lined the dirt road, tables were stacked with barbecue and drinks, and a massive bonfire crackled in the middle of my clearing. People brought folding chairs, kids ran around chasing fireflies, and for the first time ever, the residents of Silver Creek Village weren't afraid to just exist. "Man, I can't believe she's really gone," one guy, a contractor named Dave, said as he popped the cap off a beer. "That woman fined me $200 because my Christmas lights were up too long. She once tried to ban lemonade stands because she thought they lowered property values." Someone else chimed in. "My dog barked once, and she said I had to install a noise barrier." Laughter rippled through the crowd, fueled by alcohol, relief, and shared suffering finally put to an end. Then, someone got an idea. "Hey, Jake," a woman named Linda grinned, pulling out her phone. "We should send Karen a little thank you video." And before I could even process what was happening, people were lining up, raising their drinks, cheering into the camera. "To Karen, hope you're loving your new HOA-free life. Thanks for leaving, sweetheart. Best thing you ever did for this place. Maybe try not pissing off an entire neighborhood next time." It was beautiful, a poetic masterpiece of collective pettiness. Linda, grinning like the devil himself, hit send. And somewhere, in whatever miserable place Karen had crawled off to, her phone buzzed. I pictured her face twisting in rage as she watched her former neighborhood drinking, dancing, and celebrating her downfall. And that was the perfect ending.